in Texas. To
we haven't. Welcome to another episode of the Move Room. We haven't done one in a long time. We were just talking. We just started rambling. I'm enjoying hearing my friend Nick say hi.
Hi, everyone.
I kind of got a little. Well, he had a little personal thing happen, so we haven't been doing the Friday shows, and I kind of got a little, not overwhelmed, but just kind of disinterested in all the craziness because it's just like, there's only so much if you're really paying attention, it becomes, it's overwhelming, but that's not the quite word. It's just, it becomes a little too much for the brain sometimes. You just got to take a little bit back and don't let it, get to you too much. So I haven't done it in a while, but there's so much going on, it's just, like, it's crazy now. The whole thing. We were just watching a video about the effect of this NASA base on the hurricane. And you're like, what is the connection there?
Right.
And it's like they did this right around the time where this hurricane stuff was going on. This guy, Richie from Boston, does a YouTube channel, and he talked about how they had a machine that was supposedly testing rockets to go to Mars.
Some type of rocket technology, yes.
And when you look at the video, it's basically them spewing out, what was it? Oxygen?
Little clouds.
It was clouds, right.
Yeah.
So the reporter there that captured this stuff, he's like, they're doing this, and Richie showed where it is on the map and the area that would be affected by this, and it was right where the hurricane stuff is happening.
Right near the middle of the storm.
So you had a hurricane situation, and then they basically were exacerbating it.
Right. For 500 seconds, he said that they pumped in
it's really
to the atmosphere.
This isn't.
I mean, you just saw it. It looked like a house that was just on fire with clouds pouring out of it.
Yeah, pure fucking clouds, which is going to exacerbate and cause more rain.
Absolutely. You know what I mean? It causes the hurricane to go out, pick up more water, and boom, come back.
It's crazy.
And it was headed right in that direction.
So so you're like, okay, so how does this play into all of the stuff that's going on? We were just talking about how Texas, they talked about how has its own, basically it can function on its own economy. So when they initiate this martial law type situation, who do you think, without us telling you, would be the biggest obstacle for that sort of thing? What state is going to resist that the most?
Right.
I'll give you a second because I know you already came up with the answer. It's going to be Texas.
What state has a lot of guns?
Who has guns? Who do you think of when you think of guns? Beyond like gangs and stuff like that, who do you think of with guns? You think of Texas and the Texas with the guns, and they're the same people that are used to living off the land and being self-sufficient. They're the ones that are preparing and all that kind of stuff. So it's like it would make sense for them to drop this sort of thing on that area to start to have, like we talked about how many guns were lost in that whole thing, and Texas is known for guns.
And in preparation before that, when they were doing all that Jade Helm stuff, like he pointed out, it was right all through that area, doing all those drills. You know what I mean, for martial law type situations.
Yeah, so it's like
I mean, it's just crazy what it's coming to. It just seems that it's not one thing, it's literally another.
And it cracks me up, and I know people don't like Trump and all this kind of stuff, and I get it. The way he carries himself is just insane. I get that. But I think people need to have an appreciation for what the man is trying to do in terms of opening your eyes to the bullshit. He definitely is doing that, but people are focused on the idea that he's, just too nutty and
They're
too this, too that.
Everything he could cure cancer at this point, and the man would not get the credit for it.
Right, and I think people don't have an appreciation for what he potentially represents. Trump could potentially represent the last person to resist the bullshit. He potentially. Now that doesn't say he's the way he's tweets and all that kind of stuff is inappropriate. I'm not saying any of that. But this could be a man that he's 70 years old, got his own money, may not give a fuck about following protocols and listening to all the bullshit. You know what I mean? So it's like, I get that, how he carries himself is just, not presidential. I get that. But at the same time, that's kind of what people voted for. They wanted somebody that wasn't going to just fall into line and follow all the bullshit. And
look at what's around him. It's nothing else is professional. There's nothing professional
and I think
about politics or what's been going on there.
It's all bullshit. We're under this delusion that they follow the laws and they abide to the extent that they're protecting us. And you and I both know that our system is completely corrupt at this point. If you don't know that,
especially after listening to all this stuff,
you're in denial. If you don't know that our system, just pay attention.
It's not just ours, it's on a world level. And when you say that, I think Trump is almost our last hope. Not that I'm not going to say that Trump is not 100% on the take.
Right,
Because
I'm not
I
saying
don't
that either.
know
We
the
don't
full
know.
backstory.
Right, he could be as part of it.
Right.
Absolutely.
But right now, I'll tell you what. We knew Bush was a failure. We knew Obama was a failure. Right now, next to those two, to me, he looks like a saint. You know what I mean? For what he's doing. And he gets resistance at every turn. He could do something great and he'd never get the credit for it. You know, so he's 100 times better than if Hillary would have been there. I think we would have been in really, really worse shape by now. The one thing I don't know what to believe is what the hell is going on with the whole North Korean situation. We were talking about this on the very first episode of this podcast.
That's true.
Where the bombs were ready to fly, and we joked about it a month later, 2 months later,
That's
3
very
months
true.
later.
Where are the fucking bombs?
Right, and here we are, several months later, and nothing is happening. And yet, weeks ago, everybody thought we were on the verge of a nuclear war. I mean, this is the media and Hollywood foolery and trickery at its best. I can assure you, and if I was a betting man several months ago, if we laid odds, we could have probably made a lot of money by betting people that not one single bomb would ever fly, and I don't think they ever will. I think it's a tactic to divert us from what's going on. If you study the media and what is being put out there independently, you'll see that the pedophile fight with Trump, okay, is still going on. They're still uncovering stuff, still taking down high-ranking officials. Not one time do you see this in the nightly news. All you saw for the time period, again, was North Korea, Kim Jong-un, North Korea, Kim Jong-un.
And Trump.
And Trump.
Trump, you know, everything was Trump. It's got farts air all over it.
And the solar eclipse. So we've had North Korea, the solar eclipse, and now Texas we're dealing with. I don't know if you heard, but a couple channels had put it out, and I found it really, really weird that NASA, in the path of totality of the eclipse, released into the path and into the atmosphere there balloons containing different types of bacteria because they wanted to see the effect they would have on the atmosphere during an eclipse.
Really?
Yep. It's out there. I haven't seen, it's been put out there. I haven't seen anything about it as far as what strains or what they were doing or whatever, but it is a fact that NASA released some type of series of balloons all in the path of totality, running some type of scientific tests.
That was the fucking something.
So that's just really weird, and it's funny because how many millions of people were flying to the areas and getting together in groups and watching it, all with the glasses on, all looking up. You know, it's just really funny. Now you have a bunch of people in that path looking up at that eclipse, looking up at our atmosphere, and you're gonna disperse different bacteria or chemicals and run tests at that time. I mean, the stuff doesn't make sense. It's out there if you look, but yet nobody ever questions anything. Yet they put on the glasses, look up into the sky, and, you know what I mean, zone out.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. People are just zoned out, and that's you know. So, what better way to control people if they're, you know, you keep them zoned out? You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, you don't want to believe this stuff, and I get that. People don't. They want to stay in their little bubbles of life and go through, and I understand it. But when you have a future of children that are going to be into, you know, coming into a world that's completely just fucked.
Yeah.
It should at the very least give you pause. If you don't want to do anything about it, can you at least not stick your head in the sand and act like it's not the possibility of it being true? It's sad now. It's sad in the sense that the people have access to the internet and information, and they will don't care. They will not look at it. You know, I don't know. It's like it's by design. You know,
they take the word of so-called authority figures and they just accept it and leave it at that. They won't look into something for themselves. A lot of people don't like to form their own opinion. They have their own opinion, but they won't research anything. And if a news source says it, or an official figure, or a doctor, or somebody in a high position tells you, you just accept it. I mean, on the globe model, the solar eclipse, the shadow, they say, shouldn't have went from west to east because the Earth spins eastward, okay, with the moon orbiting it. So, in fact, the shadow should not have went from west to east, because if it's spinning here as the moon is going past it, it's actually going in the other direction. Conveniently, when this all went up and this information was getting out there in the weeks prior to the eclipse, NASA again tweaks, I think, their calculations and says that the moon is actually moving twice as fast in its orbit.
And all the time that they've had information about the moon, now that you see what I mean?
Now because
so people are paying attention, now they want to put out more bullshit.
Because it wouldn't actually work that way.
You see what I mean about this? This shit pisses me off.
You know,
how do you keep going along with this bullshit?
Right.
And all the information that they've had about the moon, and they traveled there and all this shit. How dare they change the numbers on you in a situation this far into the future based on the information they've already had?
It is.
How dare they? And you how do you believe this shit?
And people yet believe
because the science is supposed to be cut and dry.
Right.
Especially at this point.
It's just like the old meme where it shows the professor.
And I can
already. Want me to explain gravity? There it is. You got 4 chalkboards full of math equations.
And it's like. They'll argue that, oh, well, obviously we can adapt and learn more things. But yeah, this is as a result of people seeing through the bullshit is what they changed, though. I mean, come on.
You really believe that we went to the moon back then, but we can't go there now? But yet we're going to go to Mars. I mean, we're going from point A to point C?
You're skipping.
I mean, we never went back to point A. I mean, just everything they tell you, if you look into it, and that's by their own admission, is just some of the most ridiculous stuff you've heard.
One of my favorite things is when I say, why haven't we gone to the moon? They say, oh, there's no money. I'm like, yeah, you fucking kidding me? There's no money. You really believe that?
$52 million a day they steal at this point from taxpayers. $52 million a day. If you disbanded NASA and gave that money back, oh my God!
Well, that's the argument. There's no money. They can't go because there's no money. Are you fucking kidding me?
You know, if people...
$400 billion? Is that what the number we heard for the military spending? Is that the number?
I cringe.
Is it 400 billion? Is that the number?
38 billion a year. 38 billion a year they get, which equals to like 52 million or something a day, is what it breaks down to. So every time they want to launch a satellite into a parabolic curve and launch it somewhere, a tin can, out into the ocean, we need 300 million for that. To launch it. Anybody ever see it launched or anything? No. Just cut the check. Check's in the mail. 300 million.
Like satellites and all that shit. You know, people people working on this shit. All compartmentalized. They don't see anything. They don't see satellites going up or coming down.
It's just people need to start waking up to the truth. I really think that we are at a time where everything that's going on, it's getting to a point where stuff is happening, bad stuff happening, and it's happening more frequently, and it's going to be compounded, and it's going to get to the point where all of us are driven apart by one thing or another, and that's what they want.
That reminds me of this whole movement with the statues and all this stuff.
Oh, I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's a slippery slope when you start going that way.
Mm-hmm. The thing is, so it's like we always talk about division and how they divide and conquer us, and we fall right into the fucking trap every single fucking time.
Like
we allow so you got neo-Nazis and Antifa and all these different titles for groups and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff is keeping us Democrat, Republican, black, white, rich, poor, all those fucking socialists, all these titles, and it's all just keeping us. Well, we're just human beings, and then we work together towards the goal of making humans, have a better life. But no, we got to worry about, tearing down statues and fighting each other over people out there, having movements for whatever they believe in. And it's like, Don't fall into the traps,
That's
people.
right. And because most of the time it is a trap, because I can assure you that I'd say, and this is a very, very liberal estimate, that I'd say at least 8 out of 10 times, okay, these events are staged, coordinated, and manipulated to get a certain reaction.
I think 80 is a good number.
Absolutely, absolutely. There were various people that photographed before before the demonstrations. There were buses, okay, shuttling in groups on the same bus from both sides.
Yeah.
So now, when have you ever seen, if they're fighting in the street, okay, with each other, you're telling me the neo-Nazis and Antifa rode together peacefully on the bus and got off and then started fighting in the street? There were a handful of people that caught this via iPhones. Don't forget, everybody's got a camera in their hand.
And
it's
that's the
really,
problem.
really
That's
hard
right.
in public to get away with something where there's at least a dozen people around, because somebody's always got it out at that second. And sure as shit, they did. And they caught these buses, busing these people in from both sides on multiple buses, and the buses got out of there quick, like dropped them off, bounced quick. Unmarked buses.
God damn it! It's like, come, people, what the fuck, Morty? It's to me, it's like, it's so blatant in your face.
They
know how stupid we are!
Absolutely.
So they just do whatever they want now because nobody pays attention the way they should be.
People don't realize that we outnumber them 100,000 to 1. Let that sink in. When we unite as a people, we outnumber the oppressors. We as a human race outnumber these globalist fucking killers 100,000 people to 1. If we ever got our shit together, not only it would be over in a heartbeat, there would be nothing that they could do. Nothing they could do.
That doesn't mean we're going to need to be sitting on our laurels here, because what's happening is they're using technology to even the odds.
Absolutely.
This weather event, this is a test.
Sure is.
Whether you want to believe it or not, it's a fucking test. They're perfecting robots and all types of brain frequency stuff, and they like to put the shit out there through movies and put it in your face. But whatever you see out here now, they're 10, 20 years ahead of that.
Absolutely.
The chemtrail shit, all this stuff is equaling the playing field for them.
Right.
So you want to sit there with your head in your sand and not pay attention, and one day you're gonna wake up and you're not gonna be able to. Your 100,001 is not gonna matter, because they're gonna be able to use technology to even the odds.
It's almost as if it.
And you'll have people going on their side because they're too scared to resist.
Right. And we are at such a point where we are so in love with all of that. Mm-hmm. Just as a people, especially the younger people, even people up to our age, mm-hmm. They just grew up with it and they love it, and they've been indoctrinated through and through to the point where they love it. Even when we talked about science, modern science has become a religion, plain and simple. Modern science has become a religion that's represented by a handful of TV personalities. You see these people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye, and these other guys on TV more than you would ever see them in a lab. We've talked about it before, but it's just you talk flatter to these people, and your immediate response from them is you just don't understand science, as if we're missing something, as if because they're telling you the earth is round, that it's science, just accept it and that's the way it is. If I were to ask you, how do you really know the earth is round? I mean, I'd venture that 99% of people would have to point to some space agency and say because of NASA as their proof. Now before NASA,
because
how did we know?
There was a globe in my kindergarten classroom. That's how I know the earth is round.
And before,
you gotta start young, right?
Right. We get the globe, we get the pic from NASA, 69. I mean, but before that, how did we really know? And the answer you're going to get is because science told you.
What was the one where there was a guy that did something with a shadow or something, and he determined
the Eratosthenes shadow, and Eratosthenes, considered the world's first Freemason, was a guy in ancient Greece who supposedly calculated the that the circumference of the Earth, and it being round, by using the sun's rays casting shadows on sticks that were at different distances apart in different cities, Alexandria and someplace else. And by doing his math in the shadows, he calculated that it was whatever it is, 25,000 miles around, whatever our figure that they give us, and they considered that the first thing. I mean, this was way, way, way before Copernicus and everyone. This was at a time when people still used a flat Earth, model. Okay? So he calculated. There was only one problem, though. The calculations he made could, I suppose, equal to that circumference. But it's been proven time and time again and debunked, even though for centuries people believed it. And it's been shown, and you can see it on YouTube, that a close enough sun on a flat plane with the same sticks produces the exact same effect. The sun is not setting. The sun never sets. The sun moves across the flat plane. It moves out of your view. It never sets. The moon is another spotlight. They're opposites. You know what I mean? Sun is hot. It's antiseptic. It's a healing light. Moonlight, it's cold. It's septic. It's putrefying. Hence your necromancer shit by the moonlight.
We got a dead raccoon in front of the house. We're a little sidetrack here, and play D&D and all that kind of stuff. Necromancer, it's cool and all that kind of stuff. When you're dealing with dead things, it's actually horrible.
Yeah.
The smells, necromancers are ingrained in that. So when you're playing a necromancer, you better get your mind behind the idea that you're dealing with some nasty fucking shit.
Flesh rotting zombies.
And then you add in that the fact you're doing this with human beings. I got frogs here, and I had a hamster die, and so
I can imagine.
So what happened was there were two hamsters in there, and the frog ate one, right? And then he tried to eat another one, but it was too big. It was too much, right? So he puked one up. But I didn't know it. Right? So we had a dead one in there. Let me tell you something about the smell. This is a fucking hamster. This isn't a human being. This isn't a dog or a rat. It was the most horrific shit ever.
Decomposed?
Yeah, it was this. It was so we tried to scoop it up with like some kind of like spatula type thing, a spoon or something, and like so the hair came off or whatever. And so I don't like rodents, so I didn't do it myself, but I had my friend do it, and he got a whiff of the smell. He said, "Listen, don't smell it. I'm not kidding. Do not smell it. It's the most rancid thing. You got it. Now I'm like, all right.
Once you smell the smell of death.
So I'm like, all right, I gotta smell it. I gotta, He's like, you know what? I should listen. It was horrid. I could be off on a tangent there a little bit, but do you watch Game of Thrones?
No, I don't.
Oh, you would love it.
No, well, I see a lot of similarities to Flat Earth.
Yes, you do. That's very true.
I see an ice wall. I mean, could we be preparing the public for disclosure? I mean, through an ice wall? I don't know. There was a movement, like I was telling you before, where people
man, you got free time. That's a good show.
Yeah, so everybody says, I like to get into stuff because I do binge watch them. I suppose I could do it at some point. I don't have them, but, I could easily just stream them up and watch them. But there is a movement, they say, where a lot of flat earthers on the tips of South America and Africa and Australia and maybe some other islands scattered about that literally want to simultaneously converge on the Antarctic wall. And the rationale and thinking behind it is that if we bum rush it, what can they possibly do?
Right. Well, that goes back to your, we have the numbers. You know what I mean?
I mean, if people were to ever do anything like that, I mean, it would get to a point where it would need to be addressed because it's there. It's proof. You know what I mean? Look, we went. I mean,
here's the thing about that too. Like,
we are being kept in the middle of the pond.
On that journey, you should have people that believe in the heliocentric model, and you should have people on both sides.
Right.
Because you know what? Let's just prove this shit once and for all.
Right. But why? I mean, why haven't we been able to prove it once and for all? I mean, put it to rest. Is it just disregarded because it's such silly shit that no government would ever pay for it?
Right.
I know there's independent people there, and I know via these Kickstarter and donations, they should be able to fund it 1, 2, 3, no problem.
Yeah, that would be. I think that would be an easy one to disprove.
You know,
what
but
I mean?
I
With
don't-
our technology we have now.
Absolutely. But it would never be allowed. Why is it that every tour to Antarctica has to be a guided
That's
tour?
really incredible to me. Thinking about the.
You're really
the-
not free to travel where you want on this planet?
No, the whole thing with the Pythagorean theorem and the ships disappearing on the horizon and all that stuff, and like them not calculating for curvature for trains and bridges and all that kind of stuff.
Thank
The
God for
engineers-
Nikon.
And right, so it's like we're not gonna mention his name, but well, GB.
Yeah.
GB's. So it's like, what more do you need? Like your science.
It's just straight denial at some point.
I don't need
You know what I
all
mean?
that breakdown of math and all that kind of
Right.
stuff. This is like black and white stuff. You say there's a curvature and the ships disappear on the horizon because of it.
Right.
If that's really what's going on, how do
Then
you
it shouldn't
explain?
be too big to be seen, because it has to be seen.
Right.
You can't have it both ways.
You should not be able to bring it back into view if it's below the
Of
curve.
course not. And if it was and did go below the curve, then building a bridge 60 miles out would have to compensate for said curve, because you've just seen a ship go over it. So how would you not compensate it for the curve? I think when I made the point that no engineer has ever factored it in, whether it's laying rails, bridges, canals, this, that, ever factored in the curve of the Earth, ever. I think they actually had, I don't know if it was a news segment or on newspaper, when they were doing in Louisiana, the Pontchartrain Expressway, that bridge, I think they actually asked and put on the spot one of the engineers, and they backed him into a corner, and I think his answer was that they adjusted it by 3.5 inches. He said, he just threw out a number. Yeah, we did it, 3.5 inches. We adjusted for the curve. When it's well over a mile, and the first mile is 8 by itself. So I just don't get it. You know what I mean? So we had our friend tell us that he thinks, his expert opinion, that engineers factor and calculate on a small scale. They only do that on paper. I mean, they translate it onto a big scale over land. That's why it's called scale. You know what I mean? So you would at some point have to factor it in. I mean, there's train conductors that you hear. I mean, people who ride and build and engineer the trains, they have a very hard time going over our natural terrain on Earth, okay? If it was a ball, it would be near impossible to have rails all over the place.
Yeah,
it would be near impossible.
Think about it. Put your hand up. Curve your hand up right now and pretend it's a train.
Right.
Is that going to work?
And with each of those interlocked, and each of those cars is not curved. You know what I mean? It's not. It just would not work. They have a hard enough time
let
going
me ask
through
you another
natural
question.
landscape.
How do they justify there not being upside down cities? Based on the planet being curved. How do they justify that? Like, you should be at, like, Australia, let's say. Shouldn't you be able to take a picture with the ship being upside down?
Right.
Like, how does that...
Right.
You wouldn't notice it because you're too small in gravity? That's what it is?
Exactly. And that, and they put out, like I said, you'll see the million memes for NASA. You've shown us this, but we're still waiting for the picture of the upside down Sydney Opera House. You know what I mean? I mean, you can't have it both ways. If it's round, then that's the way they're saying.
Another one I don't like is the gravity thing, where gravity pick and chooses where it applies itself.
Yeah, that's just nonsense.
You
You can't even call it a natural force. Okay, so if a large body can attract smaller masses to it, how come I can't go to Planet Fitness, take a 300-pound barbell or dumbbell, put it down, and spread out 50-pounders around it? Show me the attraction of the greater mass attracting the smaller masses to it. I mean, there's just so many holes, and you can attack this at so many angles.
You should be able to take a bowling ball and suspend it, right? And then put, like, pea-sized marbles near it, and it should pull, right?
Right. That's what that greater mass should attract those smaller bodies. But yet we don't see it anywhere except in our cosmology on how they justify everything.
Except in theory, is what you really say. It's like if somebody said it and
I mean, nobody knows for sure. I mean, how can we? You look through the telescopes, and at the other planets, you get the thing. Well, I got a telescope. I look through it. I can see Jupiter. Well, what do you really see? You see something round, okay? You don't see it spherical. It doesn't look three-dimensional. Looks like, a certain color. Looks like it could be a light, a wandering star. Just like the people have known forever and ever what the planets are. We don't know for a fact that they're three-dimensional objects, but yet you look at the pictures NASA gives you, those nicely done CGI with Neptune and the rings of Saturn. It's like in a movie, like a planet you would land a ship on in a movie.
Yeah, you're that stuff, the NASA stuff, just doesn't add up at all. It's just like the composites that they do.
No,
all this stuff is constantly changing. You know what I mean? It's never any consistency.
And it's not that. It's just that people do it on an amateur level, and even on an amateur level, a person who's not even into it that much has got to know something's up.
Right.
I mean, why is it that you can test moonlight and the moonlight is colder than moonshade? That shouldn't be if it's reflecting the sun.
Yeah, you're not a scientist, so I can't listen to what you
Right.
say.
It's not. I just might not understand the scientific method. You know what I mean?
Tyson, okay? So.
I mean, people. That's the answer you get. It's like you're cut off by the cult of science, by the religion of science. You're cut off. We've put these guys like Neil Tyson on a high altar for them to command their their followers. And it's sad because it's a lot of people I know, a lot of people my age, a lot of people younger, and it's like, it's people who grew up loving science fiction and they just can't let go. I'm one of those people. I love that stuff, but it's not there.
What do you think separates us from them? Because we were them. We grew up with all that stuff. What do you think it is? I know that's it's really, like, the question is kind of, I don't want to say loaded, but it's like, it's such a broad thing to ask.
I've thought about that, and it's like, I'll compare myself to some of them and be like, you know what? I'm a huge geek, man. I'm a bigger Star Wars fan than maybe a lot of these guys, or a big Trek fan, or whatever. But it's like, I can accept, because I've researched this, that that's just not so, and that they're using this to put ideas in your head of what they literally want you to believe.
We're at 30 minutes, so I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we're going to end this part. We can continue after a little bit if you want, but do you remember what the point was where you decided that you believed the Earth was flat? Because I know because when you first get into it, you really, you're like, get the fuck out of here. It was a fuck. It isn't the way the Earth is flat. What the fuck?
Right.
And then you start doing research. You start watching stuff. Was there a specific moment or a thing that you saw or anything like that that really pushed you over the edge, or was it just all of it put together and you're like, you know what?
It was. I would say it was the. There were so many facts and things supporting the flat Earth that didn't make sense. Like I say, you can attack the globe from so many angles. There's the flight routes on the planes. There's Antarctica. There's all the stuff with NASA. There's the moon landings. There's all the treaties, the nuclear bombing of the firmament. I mean, there's just so much stuff. So much stuff. I had been into the conspiracy and truth stuff for a long time, looked into 9/11 for a long time, okay? And I think the natural progression from that is once you understand who did 9/11 and why, that being the United States and Israel mostly, okay? Once you understand who pulls the strings and controls the world, it takes your thinking in another dimension. And then what I would look and go deeper into the rabbit hole. And the deeper you get, flat Earth is it, okay? I mean, that's the one you almost won't look at in the beginning because it sounds so stupid. But yet I'd see people who I respected and who were smart. You know what I mean? People who had degrees, engineers, people who flew planes, who would tell you this stuff and tell you to look into it. And I'm like, these guys are not stupid people. You know what I mean? And I looked into it, and the thing that bothered me the most was, if it's so obvious with all these facts, it's why they're hiding it, okay? And the reason to hide it, and that reason is to hide the Creator. They want you living in an atheist society controlled by satanic pedophiles. And I'm not no religious nut telling you this, okay? But the world is run by evil, evil people. And that's just a fact. Maybe there's varying degrees of evil, but it's run by evil people. For the last 500 years, when you look into it with these planets, it has done one thing, the science movement. It has eliminated God, Creator, whatever you want to call it, and eliminated all reasons to have it. But when you look into the cosmology of the flat earth and the model and how it's made, and when you see that the sun, moon, and stars revolve around us, okay, and if you've ever questioned evolution and the fact that you came from a monkey's ass, okay, this model, if it is correct, and all the proof, like we just said, Antarctica, this, that, NASA's out there telling me it is, and I believe it 150%, then it was not made because of a random accident, a random explosion. It's impossible for a random explosion to create a contained system which runs like clockwork. You know, and it just confirms now. I was
Intelligent design.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? It's since coming to grips with that, because like I said, I believed that maybe there was something out there, but I was never a religious person. I don't attend church or anything like that. And I personally don't agree with organized religion. I think it causes a lot of riffraff and trouble in the world. And it's manipulated to cause a lot of trouble in the world and blamed for a lot of stuff.
More people died under the religious causes than anything
else.
else.
Sure. And it's crazy. And the way the world is going, it's like a slippery slope. And like with the statues, once you start going that way, history changes. You can't forget. And this is what their ultimate accomplishment is. And like the taking down the Confederate statues is part of that. They've covered up where we've come from and mankind's real history. The history that before us there were giants, not dinosaurs, okay? That we live on a flat plane and we were created, okay? They've changed and hid all that history, and now it's to the point where we're changing and hiding history that just simply offends a group of people.
Isn't that interesting?
Or is misconstrued.
Now, I want you to think about this for a minute, though. And I know we were going to cut the show, but I fuck it. You know, if you don't want to listen to the whole time, then don't listen to it. I don't care. When it comes to that whole thing with the statues and taking them down, what's been happening is young people are being programmed to not be able to deal with and handle adversity.
Right.
Right? So this is another example of people being pussified.
Right.
Right? The statue hurts my feelings.
Right.
Take it down. Now, that doesn't mean I'm dismissing the statue's history and what it represents. That doesn't mean I'm not ignoring the fact that whatever's written on the statue doesn't portray the other side and the harshness and the horrible things that
right.
the statue represents. What I'm saying is, leave the fucking statue there, put a plaque on it that actually tells the full history, the hardships and all that, so we don't forget the past, so we don't repeat the past.
Absolutely.
Not I start crying because I see a fucking statue.
No, because like I said, it's a slippery slope, and it won't stop there. And you have these kids who, like you said, it's a pussified generation who's taught that way. And when you're pussified like that, you're very easily manipulated.
And you want to be controlled.
Right.
You want everything provided for you.
Right.
You want to not have to deal with anything.
You want to suck the teat of government, is
right.
what it comes down to. And they make you feel happy to do that. And in the end, they're telling you how to act, what to say, and what what feelings to have towards a certain thing. And when you don't have your own freedom to form your own opinion, freedom to act how you want, and free of all that bullshit, it's really bad, and it's a slippery slope. I mean, if we're going to go down that way, Martin Luther King was against gay marriage. Should we take down his statues? How about Margaret Sanger, who's killed more black people than maybe all the wars combined? Should we take down her statues? But the liberals don't want to hear that.
Very good examples.
You know, it's a slippery slope, and it's what I laugh at is when you get these the ones who are full on communists with the communist flags and everything else, and it's like they have no clue.
Idea what the hell they're doing.
They have no clue. It's almost like a fashion statement.
I know, right? I was talking to one of my workers, and we were talking about. She was telling me about a law that was being passed. I don't forget. I believe it's already active in Canada, but they're trying to pass it in California, where you could get arrested and fined and jail time for not using the proper pronouns. Now, all right. Now, at first, I was like, "Get the actual fuck out of here!" Yeah. First of all, how are you gonna police that? Let's just start there. But
right.
I did a little more talking with her, and right now, it's let's say you're in the hospital, and you identify as the spray bottle. Right. I mean, I'm being ridiculous on purpose, but
if they don't call you,
they can get in trouble. Now, here's the thing about that. Now, you talked about science and all that kind of stuff. So basic human biology, genitalia, and all that kind of stuff. When it comes to you getting treated, right, in the hospital, that stuff comes into play.
Absolutely.
So it's like, at what point do you just start? So where does it stop?
Right.
If I identify as a spray bottle, you got to call me a fucking spray bottle. Now, you're going to call me crazy, right?
Right.
You're crazy. You're not a spray bottle. You're not a female if you have male genitalia. Now, I'm not... They're going to automatically, like, oh, he's attacking, I'm not saying people that have the mentality of being whatever they want to be. I'm not saying that. I'm not attacking that. I'm talking about the reality, what you have physically.
Right. Absolutely.
What the fuck is going on? How did we get here?
For legal manners, it has to be classified that way. It's not pick what you want to be. Pick one of the above. You know what I mean?
I identify this fucking spray ball. I want my own fucking bathroom. If you don't have my bathroom, I'm going to sue you.
I mean, what is the world coming to? I don't even want to be a part of that nonsense.
Right. So, but I'm reinforcing this. That we're becoming like crazy almost. Like, is this real life that we're witnessing here? Could you imagine this sort of stuff back when we were young? It's like I don't even know how. I don't even know.
This is the result of years and years of indoctrination, TV, social programming, just everything. And it's funny how I was watching a thing on how the last 100 years and the education system and the indoctrination and how, and it fits perfectly with how 100 years ago, the Rockefellers and all these rich people, okay, all these Illuminati types, they wanted children in public schools. They wanted them indoctrinated. They wanted the government to control them. Kids back then, we were an agrarian society. We were all farmers, okay? They took these children off the farms that taught them life skills, taught them about life, how to grow food.
Self-sustainability.
They took them off of the farms and they made that lifestyle seem hokey and redneck and farmers are dumb hicks and stuff like that, when most of these children who were homeschooled were actually smarter than a lot of their counterparts. And it still holds true to this day to people who live on, like, say, remote Alaska, remote Canada or Yukon, who homeschool their children. Their children look so much healthier and intelligent.
I'm sure they're healthier. I can tell you that.
No vaccines, no nothing. But we have taken the kids off of the farms literally and put them into this public school system, which is nothing more than indoctrination. And for 100 years, this is what has systematically created.
Yeah, now it's reinforced with the technologies.
Absolutely. It's gone totally the opposite. It's gone totally the opposite. It wants you in almost a literal matrix. It wants you not outside, it wants you indoors, in front of a screen. And I'm guilty of it. I sit in front of a screen for hours. We all, yeah. I mean, how can you not be, these days?
But the difference there is, though, I'm not, like, now what I'm seeing is a lot of the young people are socially awkward now because they live on the computer.
Yeah.
There is no outside.
Right, exactly. You see it, and when you have to deal with them if they hold a part-time job and how they handle you. If they're registered jockeys. I mean, they are just completely brain dead. You literally have to do the transaction for them. tell them what to do, what change to give you.
I can't believe some of the stuff that I've dealt with being a manager and hiring, dealing with young people. I
mean,
can't believe the mentality. First of all, it's they're entitled. They have that like entitlement thing.
Right.
Like, you know, it's like, you gotta earn your keep, man. If the world doesn't hand you anything, are you
Right.
crazy? You need to take responsibility for yourself and your actions, not blame everybody else.
And they expect it, and they're just babies about it. But they literally want it, but they offer nothing in return because they're brain dead. They're literally brain dead.
But I don't know. All right. So we did 45 minutes, and I gotta get ready to pick up my friend. Well, okay. So thanks for coming by. We're gonna start picking it up again.
We're gonna start doing this on the regular.
We'll start picking it up again, and you know, like, subscribe, share, and you know, try to spread the word as much as you can if you care. You know, but. Thanks for listening, and we'll hope to hear from you. We'll hope to have you listen again soon.
Research Flat Earth. Unite us. Flat Earth unites us all.
But Richie from Boston, check him out. He's good information there, especially when it comes to this Houston situation with the weather and all that kind of stuff. Check it out. He's got some good information about the NASA's influence on all that situation.
NASA playing God with the weather.
All right. Bye-bye.